My name is Kelvyn Cullimore. I'm the CEO of BioUtah, the trade association for life science companies here in the state of Utah. My background is I've been a CEO of a publicly traded medical device company. Some of you may recognize me as the mayor of Cottonwood Heights for about 13 years. Served on the board of the Medical Device Manufacturers Association. So I love life sciences, love politics, which is great for being part of a trade association. And we have with us some very, very special guests today because while our industry covers a lot of territory, we're going to focus on pharmaceuticals today and development of new drugs. So I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves and we'll get started.
Thanks, Kelvyn. Great to be here today. I know many of you. My name is, there's a lot of the Recursion folks in the audience, if you were not one of those, that joke. My name is Tina Larson. I'm the president and COO of Recursion. You may have just seen our founder and CEO, Chris, receive the Governor's Science Industry Medal. And we're a biotechnology company here in Salt Lake City. My background is biochemical engineering. I'm more than 25 years in the biotechnology industry. I spent the first 20 plus years of that in the Bay Area working at an industry-leading company called Genentech, and actually spent that on developing innovative manufacturing processes to create new medicines. So I'm really excited about this panel today, really excited about the potential of bringing some of this pharmaceutical research and development, companies like Recursion, as well as eventually translating that into manufacturing, and all in service of bringing better medicines to patients.
I'm Cindy Dunkle, and I do not know as many of you, but I admire many of you through known reputation, and I Google people to death. I told Dave, I Googled you. I know exactly, know Dave by reputation. I'm with Denali Therapeutics and have been there since day one with Brian Moss, our CEO, Alex Schuth, and Mark Levine, who are three co-founders, have the inspiration to really focus on neurodegenerative diseases and to say we're not going to put neurology back on the shelf anymore. It's time for us to have a dedicated focus on this disease area, focus on Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, as well as rare diseases. In time I spent years also at Genentech Roche, and my focus has been workforce planning and development and helping to think of intellectual horsepower and how to organize that across different functions within an organization, and have had the privilege of just being a student of people for almost 30 years now. And what I've learned and what we focus on at Denali is how to leverage unique gifts and talents so that we can solve really difficult, complex problems. So with that, we have a ton of confidence that we will crack the code on these extremely difficult diseases.
Hi everybody, my name is Dave Beers. I have a PhD in cell biology, cell biologist by training, but I've been involved in drug discovery and development for a long time, most of my career. I trained with a guy named Dan Ronhoff, who's a very famous clinician scientist, and Dan's probably run 500 phase 1 clinical trials with new agents. So when I worked with him, I probably saw 100 new drugs enter the clinic, and learned a lot during that process, and kind of caught the bug of trying to translate research that we discover in labs to things that can help people. And I've been a faculty member at several universities, including I think all the major universities here in Utah. I've actually been on faculty at all of them. I'm a Utah native. I've started several companies, all of them here in Utah, and was at the Huntsman Cancer Institute for a while, spun out 4 companies out of the Huntsman. One of those I left to run called Pharmaceuticals. We were acquired by Sumitomo Dainippon Pharma, a Japanese pharmaceutical company, and I stayed on as their chief scientific officer and global head of research for oncology for a few years. And then Sumitomo's still here, growing here, and have a site down in Lehigh. I've since left Sumitomo and doing lots of things now. I have several companies I'm involved with. I'm actually involved with the University of Utah, running the therapeutic accelerator of the University of Utah. But just wanted to highlight a couple of the companies I'm working with. Halia Therapeutics, company I started with a professor down at Brigham Young University, Keone Kawe, actually dedicated to neurodegenerative diseases. So that's where we started. We have a drug that's just in the next, hopefully, couple days, going to be first patient dosed a new drug to target inflammation, targeting the NLRP3 inflammasome, which is a brand new, really exciting target. So we're excited to see what that looks like, and then building a company called Center with Rich Linder, and we're super excited about this. We're making smart medical devices that generate digital biomarkers that we're using to find new patients to treat with new drugs. So it's a pretty exciting time. I have too many full-time jobs, but I love it. It's my passion. It's what I love to do.
What David didn't tell you is that the exit he had from Tulare was probably one of the largest exits in the state of Utah, especially in life sciences. And he has been a seed capital investor in so many companies. If we just turn the time to him, he could take up the rest of the time talking about all the companies that he's involved with. So we appreciate his participation here today, as well as Cindy and Tina. We are going to focus a lot on their entities that they work with. We do have one company that wasn't able to be here, Teva Pharmaceuticals, and if you know of Teva, they are a very large manufacturer of pharmaceuticals here. You would recognize some of the brand names and generics that they manufacture as drugs that are very common in the pharmaceutical world. So with that, I'm going to start with Tina, and we'll just go right down the line. I'm going to have each of them tell you a little bit about what they are doing to solve the problem of diseases and things that you may be familiar with and some that you aren't familiar with.
All right, well, thank you, Calvin. I'll start by saying one thing I just realized. All of us are working in neuroscience, which is pretty amazing, and we're doing it right here in Utah, so it's fantastic. And maybe just a quick story that will explain how I think about recursion. As I mentioned, I started my career at Genentech. Genentech was the company that crafted the biotechnology industry, right? And you kind of can see that ripple effect even here. And if you had told me a decade ago that in 2022 I would be working at the world's leading technology-enabled drug discovery company, I would have been pretty excited about that. Because that was becoming obvious that something in the realm of tech meets biotech was going to be the next great revolution of our industry. And so if a decade ago Tina could have known I was going to be working at that company, I would have been ecstatic. If then you would have told me that company was going to be in Salt Lake City, Utah, that would have been a surprising piece of information to me, right? And even when Recursion reached out to me, I joined the company 4 years ago, the recruiter actually didn't tell me where it was located, and my only thought at the time was, I hope it's not in Boston. So I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time, and in the world I lived in, every company like this that was the tech meets biotech was either in San Francisco or was in Boston. So my only hope was that it was in San Francisco so I could work there. And so when I started engaging and then learned it was in Utah, it really started a journey that honestly has changed my life. And I'm so excited to be part of this really exciting life science industry here. So that's a little bit of a personal story. And then maybe more simply what Recursion does, we're building the 21st century biopharmaceutical company. And that's why I kind of tell this story for my life. I have the opportunity to twice in my life work at the companies that disrupted this incredibly important industry, bringing new therapies to patients. And we're doing that by bringing together the best of technology, machine learning, artificial intelligence, automation, and pairing it with the best of modern biology. Things like CRISPR is a kind of technology some of you may have heard of. And so, and we're doing that with an incredible team of Recursionauts. We have 480, or probably more than 480 folks today. We're headquartered here in Salt Lake City. We also have sites in the Bay Area, in Montreal, in Toronto. And we're really excited to be building the company that's going to use technology to bring truly life-changing treatments to patients.
We have confidence because they're confident. They have the AI and the technology to support many of the problems that we're trying to solve. And so it may not be hard to understand why are we here. Well, there is that adage we're not meant to stay where we are, and we realize that the Bay Area was not going to be the place that we could build for the future, and specifically for clinical manufacturing, not just the aspects of clinical manufacturing, the cost, everything that occurs, I would say legislation, thinking about pricing, so many things happen in the Bay Area that there is a more intense focus in Utah to manage companies to be able to grow and to move forward. It's an important step for us to be here, but thinking about where Denali is in our history and what's happening, we're only 7 years old. our team, we realized they're just completely unstoppable. And it's because we all have this spectrum of pain, of experiencing disease and, in our own respective, personal lives to possibility, and taking some of the greatest scientific problems and putting it in a team that is passionate and personal, has a personal connection. We are going to solve for these diseases. And I can tell you so much about what we are doing at Denali in terms of de-risking discovery and development, which our pillars are really thinking about this from our genogenes and thinking about our scientific platform as well as through the BBB platform in terms of being able to manufacture and both small molecules as well as large proteins and get those across the blood-brain barrier, and then of course biomarker-driven development, which we'll get to in terms of looking at predictive biomarkers to help us know so much about these diseases.
Thanks, and thanks for sharing that. I think that's the great thing about our industry and what we do is we impact real people. Real people are affected by what we do, and it's so easy to get motivated and get up in the morning to think, what I'm doing today could be the thing that leads to changing the course of real people's lives. And it personally affected me. My mom died of cancer when I was young, and my grandpa died of cancer when I was born, the year I was born. So it's easy for me to get motivated to think about something that I can do would help somebody's mom and grandpa stay along a little longer so they can have those relationships. So I love our industry for that reason, and it's really motivating for me. 23 years ago, I got asked to give my first big scientific presentation at a conference. First time I presented in front of 10,000 plus scientists is a big deal. Chris remembers those types of things, right? But that's, being able to get up there and give that presentation. I remember I said, in 25 years, we're going to have all of these things solved, right? We've got the Human Genome Project almost ready. 23 years ago, it was almost the completion of the human genome sequencing, and we all thought that was going to be the key to really change everything. And in a lot of ways it has, but I think in different ways than what we thought. And what's exciting to me, I think what Recursion's doing and what we're trying to do is to build on that platform or that foundation and really to see the promise of what we all thought we could do 25 years ago, right? And how we thought things were going to be different. I think if myself 23 years ago when I gave that presentation where I said it's all going to be different, if I would have seen what we're doing today, I'd be a little disappointed, but also excited that there's opportunity to do things I never thought of. And so one of the things that I'm involved with, I told you about this company, Center. I love the idea of being able to measure things in people that have never been measured before, to generate data from the place where the disease is. And so, a lot of the stuff that we look at is DNA. We can look at a person's sequence, but that's just a piece of the puzzle. And we're actually developing devices that have electronics on those devices that can sense things that tell us something about the physiology of diseases, and using that data to say, when you have this measurement, you're going to have this kind of outcome, and this measurement has a different outcome, and it allows us to truly try to practice what we've been talking about for years of precision or personalized medicine. And so we're excited about the platform that we're building. It's remarkable to be involved in bringing technology into medicine in a different way than I think I've ever thought of before. So that's exciting, and we're building those devices here. Did all the chip design here. We've got a really great team, over 70 people. We've grown real fast. We started less than 2 years ago, and we've got over 70 people working on this project, and we have a clinical stage compound that will be treating in clinical trial here this year. So we're excited about what we've done. I already mentioned a little bit about Halia, the other company I founded and been very actively involved with. One of the things that I've learned over time as I get older is it's a lot harder to recover from disease and injuries the older we get. When I was young, I played a lot of sports, played football, and I twist my ankle 2 days later, I was fine. Twist my ankle today, 6 months later, I can still feel it, right? So those things have been things I've been thinking about is, why is that, and what contributes to that? And I think we've learned a lot about our body, how our body responds to damage and injury, and I tell everyone when we're young, our immune system's trying to keep us alive, and when we're old, it's trying to kill us. And so we've learned about how inflammation can get out of control, and how inflammation is supposed to resolve itself and go back to baseline, but these chronic inflammatory diseases really affect everything. Every disease you can think of has an inflammatory component to it, and we're just super excited that we discovered a way to turn off that chronic inflammatory switch, and we're excited to see what happens with people. So we're built. That drug was discovered here, was designed here, and all the testing done here in our small little team. So we're excited to see what happens when we put it in real people and see what we can do. Oh, one last thing. Actually, I also have another hat that I wear at the University of Utah, helping develop new therapies coming out of the University of Utah. So one of the problems, and I remember Chris was a student when I was a faculty member of the U, so I've known him for a long time. And one of the hard things about bringing technology out of the university is there's really not great infrastructure at the university to move discoveries to a place where they have a chance of being successful. We usually license things pretty early, mostly kind of at the conceptual or idea stage. So we, with Mary Beckerly and Randy Peterson and Keith Marmar at the U, we hatched an idea to put industry-focused people at the university, people that know how to manage therapeutics programs, and put some money there that allows them to identify attractive therapeutic projects that we can work side by side with university investigators to move those programs forward in a way that we would at Recursion or Denali or Halia or Center, that when the data that's generated, it would be something that these guys would recognize as something that is potentially commercially viable. So we're excited about that. We think that's going to really be a sea change for technologies coming out of the university, and we're excited to see the first fruits of that come out here real soon.
As you can see, we've got some very exciting technologies being developed right here in the state of Utah. Advanced drug discovery that is happening that will affect your lives and the lives of some of your kids and grandkids. And it's all happening right here. Most people don't even recognize it. So let me ask you a couple of questions. First of all, the process of drug development has changed over the last decade, as we've experienced with COVID-19. And how is that process accelerating, bringing product to market, and how confident should the public be in the products that are being produced? Because you all are right at the heart of it.
We always have to go in this order. Okay. I'll keep doing it until we tell us something different. Yeah, so I guess there are a couple of quick downs and arrows. First, as somebody who's worked in manufacturing in the industry for many years, if my daughter, myself, or any member of my family ever needed a pharmaceutical product and it was not counterfeit, I would have absolute confidence taking it. There is an enormous amount of safety and thinking and I almost said conservatism, but an enormous amount of energy that goes into making sure the safety of the drug supply chain. So I have absolute, after many, many years making many, many batches myself, doing many, many quality control checks, this is a very safe industry. The other part of the question about COVID-19 I think is so interesting, and I think what's so interesting about COVID-19, old school people like me who've spent my life trying to get drugs out to market, when the pandemic started and everybody in my family was reaching out to me because they're like, oh, all that stuff you always want to talk about that we never cared about, drugs and supply chains, and now we care, right? And they said, how long before we have a vaccine? And I was like, it's going to be years, guys. Right? Buckle down and we'll move as fast as we can, but this thing takes real time. And the speed at which we got vaccines, and not just any vaccines, but mRNA vaccines, true innovation, a true new technology platform. It was really stunning, and so I don't think we've seen exactly how that's going to play out in terms of how it impacts the industry, but there's something that there's kind of an imagination barrier that many of us suffer from. People like me suffer from it. People like maybe David, Cindy, and Chris don't suffer from it, but I suffer from it, right? This imagination barrier. And once the imagination barrier is broken, and I think in this case, once we've broken the barrier of how long it takes to get something truly new and innovative and life-changing from concept out into millions of people, it has to change the way we think about drug discovery and development, and it needs to change the way. Right now, it takes about 14 years to get a single therapeutic to market. It takes billions of dollars. That just doesn't feel. I think the industry is accepted, and if there's a 10% success rate, the industry's just accepted that too long, and I think COVID-19 has broken the imagination barrier, not just for those of us from the industry, but for the rest of the world, and that's very powerful, and I'm hoping that we don't, once you break through the imagination barrier, that you just can't go back, and I believe that's what COVID-19's done for us, and so it's incredible that Utah is positioned with so much innovative technology. Now that imagination barrier has been broken, and there's so much goodness in the state and supportive business, I think this is an incredible time for us to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I would echo that Kelvin can tell you that when government programs get put in place, they're hard to change, right? So to have so much change happen so quickly, all of us are thinking, what does this mean moving forward? And once you set a precedence, it's hard to walk back on that. So I actually was talking to Scott Gottlieb last night. He was former commissioner of the FDA. He was on the board of my previous company, and he and I are very good friends. And we've been talking about, what does this mean from a regulatory standpoint? And now that they've opened the door to certain things, and the idea that you don't need to understand as much as maybe you used to, and still can have a safe and effective product come out, that's hopefully that's something that's going to change. So I'm excited about that. It is funny that relatives and friends come up and they know things like pharmaceutical supply chain, and they're talking to you about Moderna. It's like, how do you know Moderna? It's like, these are things that we know about, but it's kind of amazing how much COVID has really changed people's perspective. I think before COVID, the pharmaceutical industry was thought of just about where the tobacco industry was, right, in terms of how the public perception is. And now people are like getting tattoos about their Pfizer people or whatever. It's crazy. So, hopefully we don't blow it and we take advantage of this opportunity to kind of really help people understand that we're here to, the vast majority of people that I've met, in fact, everyone really, that with the exception of maybe one or two people I've met in this industry, are really here to help people. I mean, that's what gets us up every morning. That's what motivates us. So I'm hopeful that we've got an opportunity, and we're going to take advantage of that to really change things of how quickly we can get medicines to people. Because I think everyone's frustrated with it. It's just not satisfying to think it takes 14 years to translate something that you discovered into something that can actually help people, and most of the programs aren't making it.
And we're fortunate that Taylor Randall, the new president of the U, just announced he was committing $100 million over 5 years for that translational gap. That's going to be very helpful to advancing therapeutics and other kinds of technology. The other thing that's exciting, regulatory is one thing, but I'm also excited about the fact that the technologies you are all working on are literally, and I hate to use this word because people misinterpret it, shortcutting the process. It's accelerating the process by which discovery is occurring. And that's happening right here. All of you are involved in some aspect of doing that. And to me, that's something really exciting. So, we've only got a few minutes left. Last question I want to ask you is, as you look forward, knowing what you know and believing what you believe, what do you think is going to be the most exciting therapeutic development in the next 5 years? And it's okay to be a homer and say it's your product, because you know most about that. But tell us in layman's terms what you think is going to be the most exciting thing, preferably coming out of Utah, but it's okay if it doesn't, but that is going to happen in the next 5 years.
I'd like Cindy to go first on this last question.
I'll take one for the team, but it's only going to get better from here. That's the stage. You know, I think in the next 5 years, it's predictive biomarkers that will give us an opportunity to, you know, to understand disease much earlier on in the progress of the people. A predictive biomarker is essentially, you know, helping us to understand where the disease starts in the body, and you know, being able to use a targeted approach to therapy so that you're not just blasting the body with unnecessary your chemos. You know, some of those treatments, you know, long ago, now we have antibody drug conjugates, we have cancer immunotherapies, we have so many progressive opportunities in which we can actually target a disease. And clearly for us, that is our biomarker-driven development strategy. And for us, yeah, I'm gonna be a homer. It is, if we can, and the reasons why we're here for clinical manufacturing is to step aside from this supply chain issue that exists in other places, but also from a cost, a speed, a rigor perspective. It's happening in Utah, and for us, we want that to be in the space of neurodegenerative disease for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or ALS, and it's gonna come from Utah.
So ALS will be solved in 5 years.
Sure.
I'm a dreamer, and I don't want to say I'm a realist because you know that sounds controversial, but we are going to make massive progress in this space and understanding the disease, and so we will make progress. Will we solve it? We're on path. So that's the truth.
All right, David, what's your...
Yeah, so, you know, when I look at something that we can have an immediate impact, so I have a little skunk works project that I'm working on that I feel very much like what we were just talking about, that, you know, it's very different than when I started in drug discovery, you know, more than 25 years ago. We have a lot of really good drugs. And part of the problem is we don't know who's going to benefit from what drug, right? So for a lot of indications, unfortunately for some of the, you know, ALS, Alzheimer's, we don't have a lot of good drugs. But for a lot of things, you know, cardiovascular disease, cancer, you know, some of these indications where there's been a lot of progress made, the reason why people still die is we don't know what a person's going to respond to and what order to give these drugs in. And so what happens a lot of times, you know, unfortunately we diagnose these diseases late a lot of times, and so we diagnose them when they're kind of in stage. And so if we can diagnose them earlier, that's going to make a difference. But even within stage disease, if we could figure out whether a person was responding faster to a therapy, so like for cancer, for example, we still rely, you know, this is the thing that blows my mind, is people think that medicine's really cutting edge. It's not really. We use technology that's 40 years old to decide whether a person's responding to a tumor. We do a CT scan and we literally measure the dimensions of the tumor. Is it shrinking or growing? And a lot of times we look at it and say, it's neither shrinking or growing, it's kind of just sitting there, and is that good or bad? And so we spend basically the entire lifespan of a patient just trying to figure out, is what we're doing helping them? And I think we can make tremendous progress by being able to get biomarkers that tell us whether something's working or not faster. And because with a lot of these diseases, we have available therapeutics and people die without being able to expend all the things that are there. There's still bullets in the gun, right? That we haven't used all the things that are available to us. So we're excited about the idea of being able to develop a biomarker platform that allows us to have a very early readout to say yes or no, this is working, and we can switch that patient to something that they would have a better chance of responding to. Now that's something I think we can make an impact in 5 years, right? I mean, that's something that because we don't have to go through the whole process of you know, testing a drug, we're just going to use the drugs that are available right now and see if we can you know, use them in a different way.
All right, Tina, you get the last
I know, those are amazing answers. I'm so inspired. I'm gonna take a little bit. I'm gonna say the biggest innovation in the coming years is data, and you know, even large companies. So we signed a large you know, industry defining partnership with Genentech Roche late last year, and they're going through a digital transformation. You hear the companies like Novartis talking about being a data science company, partnering with companies like Microsoft. Even traditional industry are understanding that the next generation of company has to be a data-first company. And you pair that with this being the 21st century, being the century of biology, biology being one of the most fascinating, complex problems, high-dimensional problems. We walk around in it every day, and we literally do not understand how our own bodies work. Right? It's amazing. And so I think the biggest innovations that we're going to see in the coming years are, can we really take advantage of data and technology that's really disrupted other industries? And at Recursion, we talk about, for example, I'm a bit of a homer into that, right? So we talk about our ability to map and navigate technology, right? And if you kind of think about the analogies to things like Google Maps, and some of you may have used them to get here today, that foundational data, having the foundational data of biology, and now for the first time ever are having the tools to actually generate large data sets of biology, having the tools to manipulate biology using things like CRISPR. This is where I think that we're going to get unstuck from this just unacceptable bottleneck of most drugs going into clinic, failing in clinical trials. We just don't understand the biology, right? And then data is going to be the pathway by which we finally just fundamentally up-level our understanding of the biology, and that's going to open the gateway to all sorts of ways we don't even understand today in terms of how to create better therapeutics. So it's very exciting.
Well, if you haven't understood by now, these are some of the smartest people in the state of Utah. And they work for some of the greatest companies. I mean, to understand the kinds of things they work on day in and day out, this is true science. And this is the kind of thing that's going to make a difference in our lives and in the lives of our families and our children and our grandchildren, and it's all happening right here in Utah. And we're thrilled to have them. Let's give our panel a round of applause.